You might find this interesting. Under the Hindu Marriage Act, there are basically two types of divorces. There are mutual consent divorces and there are contested divorces. Mutual consent divorces are those divorces where both parties want a divorce, and so they can apply to the court. They can explain the reasons for why they're not getting along with each other. And usually in these cases, since both parties want a divorce, the court usually grants a decree of divorce within 6 to 8 months. So the process is very quick, and the parties can go their separate ways. Unfortunately, when it comes to contested divorce cases, there is a practical problem that arises. So under the relevant divorce law, which is section 13 of the Hindu Marriage Act, there is a list of grounds that is provided for, and a party who wants a contested divorce has to use either one of these grounds to apply for divorce. Now this list that is provided under the law, it's a very narrow list. It typically and broadly includes situations where there is adultery, or where the spouse has converted to another religion, or where they're suffering from mental illness or venereal disease that makes it difficult for this party to reside with that their spouse. It includes desertion, it includes cruelty, but there is a very set list. Now, unfortunately, what happens is when clients come to us, they tell us that we are very different from our spouses. We've realized this in the time that we've lived with them. And because we have very different lifestyles, because we have different expectations from life, we are unable to get along, and therefore we want a divorce. But since this ground, the ground that allows you to approach the court and say that grant us a divorce because we are unable to get along with our spouse, this ground itself is not listed under the law. It doesn't form a valid ground to approach the court of law for a divorce. And so when this ground is not available, the next most common ground that people can use from the list that is provided under the law is cruelty. Now this may explain why you keep seeing in the news that there are divorce cases pending where either of the spouses have alleged cruelty against each other. Now in many cases, yes, there is one or the other kind of cruelty, but there are also many cases where there is no cruelty. There is just a mismatch of expectations from the marriage, and therefore one of the parties wants a divorce. But unfortunately, when that party is disallowed from approaching the court of law with this ground, by saying that I'm unable to get along with my spouse, and so you grant me divorce, the only option they're left with is to say that my partner is being cruel to me or has been cruel to me, and so I'm seeking divorce from the court. And this is very problematic. It shows how the list that is provided under the law, the grounds that have been provided under the law, form a very narrow list, a narrow perspective, and this list has become outdated. It does not meet the requirements of the modern world where people work in different zones, want different things from life, and usually they find out that they are very different from each other only after certain time has passed after the marriage. But the law makes it very difficult for these people to get a decree of divorce, and so these people stay stuck in the marriage, stay stuck in the litigation, and they have to spend anywhere between 5 to 15 years in the courts, fighting on the district level, on the high court level, on the Supreme Court level. And after spending a lot of time, energy, resources, finally, if they're lucky, they get a divorce, and if they're not lucky, then the divorce petition is rejected. And so the law needs to evolve. But in the meantime, if you're one of these people who's stuck in this kind of a situation, instead of applying for a contested divorce, you have the option of mediating, settling your disputes in mediation, talking it out with your spouse, and coming to finding common ground, and making sure that when you approach the court, you approach the court jointly, so that you can approach under the provision that allows for mutual consent divorce, and you can get a decree of divorce soon and move on in your life.